Picture this. It's November 13th, 1974. Oklahoma. A 28-year-old woman named Karen Silkwood is driving alone on a dark highway at night. She's heading to meet a journalist from the New York Times and a union representative. In her car, she has documents, evidence of safety violations at the nuclear facility where she works, evidence of falsified records, evidence that could expose one of the most powerful corporations in America. She never makes it to that meeting. At 7:30 p.m. her car veers off the road and crashes into a concrete culvert. Karen Silkwood dies instantly. When police arrive, they find her body still in the car, but they don't find any documents. Her car is severely damaged, but in a strange way the back is crushed more than the front, suggesting she was hit from behind. There are dents on her rear bumper that don't match the accident, and the most suspicious detail: fresh dents on her rear bumper are clean, no dirt, no rust, like they happened just before the crash. The police rule it a single-vehicle accident. They say she fell asleep at the wheel. Case closed. But the people who knew Karen don't believe it, because Karen Silkwood wasn't just any worker. She'd been contaminated with plutonium, the deadliest substance on Earth. She'd been threatened, she'd been followed, and she was about to blow the whistle on safety violations that could shut down a multi-million-dollar nuclear facility. This is the story of Karen Silkwood, a woman who discovered something so dangerous that it may have cost her her life. A mystery that remains unsolved 50 years later, and a question that still haunts everyone who knew her. Was Karen Silkwood murdered? And if so, why hasn't anyone been held accountable? Let me take you back to 1972. Karen Silkwood is 25 years old, recently divorced. With 3 young children she's left with her ex-husband because she can't afford to raise them alone. She needs work, good-paying work. And in Crescent, Oklahoma, there's a plutonium plant run by Kerr-McGee Corporation that's hiring. The pay is excellent, way above minimum wage. The work? Making plutonium fuel rods for nuclear reactors. Karen gets hired as a lab technician. Her job is to polish plutonium pellets, small cylinders of nuclear fuel that will be loaded into reactors across America. It's dangerous work. Plutonium is one of the most toxic substances known to humanity. A speck of it smaller than a grain of sand, if inhaled, can cause lung cancer. If ingested, it can cause bone cancer, liver damage, organ failure. There's no safe level of exposure. None. But Kerr-McGee assures workers the facility is safe. They have protocols, protective equipment, monitoring systems. Karen believes them. She needs the job. She starts working at the plant, and at first everything seems fine. The pay is good. The work is steady. She starts dating a coworker named Drew Stevens. Life is looking up. But then Karen starts noticing problems. Small things at first. Equipment that doesn't work properly. Safety procedures that aren't followed. Contamination alarms that go off and are ignored. Workers who get sick, unusual cancers, respiratory problems. But management says it's unrelated to the plutonium. Karen starts asking questions. She talks to other workers. They tell her stories. Plutonium contamination incidents that weren't properly reported. Dosimeters, devices that measure radiation exposure, that were tampered with to show lower readings. Quality control records that were falsified to make it look like fuel rods met safety standards when they didn't. Karen is shocked. These aren't small violations. These are dangerous. If defective fuel rods make it into nuclear reactors, they could fail catastrophically. And if workers are being exposed to plutonium without proper monitoring, they could be dying slowly without even knowing it. In 1974, Karen joins the Oil, Chemical and Atomic Workers Union. She becomes active immediately, attending meetings, raising safety concerns. The union is also worried about Kerr-McGee. They've heard complaints from multiple workers. They ask Karen if she'd be willing to investigate, to document safety violations, to gather evidence, to become a whistleblower. Karen agrees. She starts keeping detailed notes. She photographs quality control documents that show falsified data. She talks to workers off-site, gathering testimonies. She's building a case, and she's good at it. Meticulous, thorough, brave. But Kerr-McGee notices. Management starts watching her. She's called into meetings and questioned about her union activities. Coworkers who are loyal to the company start avoiding her. She receives threatening phone calls at home. Anonymous voices telling her to stop asking questions, to mind her own business. Karen doesn't stop. If anything, she becomes more determined. She knows she's onto something big, something that could save lives. Then on November 5, 1974, something terrible happens. Karen is working in the lab when her contamination alarm goes off. She's been exposed to plutonium, not externally. Somehow plutonium has gotten inside her body. A urine test confirms it. She has 400 times the legal limit of plutonium in her system. Karen is terrified. Plutonium contamination is often a death sentence. It takes years, but it's almost always fatal. Cancer, organ failure, slow, painful deterioration. The company sends her to Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico for testing and decontamination. She spends days undergoing tests, being scrubbed down, trying to remove the plutonium from her body. But here's the mystery. How did Karen get contaminated? She was wearing protective equipment. She followed protocols. The company claims it was an accident, that she was careless, but Karen insists she did everything right, and other workers notice something strange. The contamination pattern doesn't match an accident. It looks like plutonium was deliberately placed on her. Her apartment is tested. It's contaminated. Her bathroom, her refrigerator, her food, all have traces of plutonium. Someone brought plutonium into her home. But how? Did Karen accidentally carry it home on her clothes? Or did someone plant it there to intimidate her? To make her look incompetent? To discredit her as a whistleblower? Karen believes she was deliberately contaminated. She thinks the company, or someone working for the company, is trying to silence her. She's more frightened than ever, but also more determined. She contacts the New York Times. She tells them she has evidence of safety violations at Kerr-McGee. She has documents proving quality control records were falsified. She's ready to go public. The journalist David Burnham is interested. He arranges to meet Karen on November 13, 1974, at a hotel in Oklahoma City. Karen will bring the documents. The union representative Steve Wodka will be there too. This meeting could blow the whole story open. It could expose Kerr-McGee. It could change nuclear safety regulations across America. Karen spends the days before the meeting gathering her evidence. She's nervous. She knows this is dangerous. She tells friends that if anything happens to her, they should know she didn't just have an accident. She's being followed, she says. Cars tail her when she drives home. People watch her apartment. She's scared, but she's committed. November 13, 1974, 7 p.m. Karen leaves a union meeting in Crescent, Oklahoma. She's driving alone in her white Honda Civic. It's a 30-mile drive south on Highway 74 to Oklahoma City for the 8 p.m. meeting. She has the documents with her, multiple folders of evidence against Kerr-McGee. She never arrives. At approximately 7:30 p.m., her car leaves the road, crosses the shoulder, and crashes into a concrete culvert. The impact is severe. Karen dies instantly from blunt force trauma. When police arrive, they conduct a brief investigation. They conclude it's a single-vehicle accident. Karen fell asleep at the wheel, they say. She'd been working long hours. She was exhausted. It was dark. These things happen. They tow the car and notify next of kin. But when Karen's colleagues hear about the accident, they don't believe it. Karen wasn't tired. She'd been at a union meeting 30 minutes earlier, and witnesses said she seemed alert, focused, determined. She was driving to the most important meeting of her life. She wouldn't fall asleep. And there's another problem. The documents are missing. Police searched the car and found nothing. No folders, no papers, no evidence. Karen's co-workers insist she had documents with her. Where are they? The union demands a proper investigation. They hire a private investigator, A.O. Pipkin, to examine the crash site in Karen's car. What he finds is disturbing. First, the damage pattern is wrong. The rear of Karen's car is crushed more severely than the front, which doesn't match a head-on collision with a culvert. It looks like she was hit from behind, hard, which pushed her off the road. Second, there are fresh dents on her rear bumper, dents that show bare metal, no rust, no dirt, like they happened minutes before the crash. Analysis suggests these dents came from another vehicle striking her from behind. Third, witnesses come forward. A truck driver reports seeing Karen's car being followed by another vehicle shortly before the crash. Another driver reports seeing a car speed away from the crash site right after the accident. The union publishes these findings. They hold press conferences. They demand the FBI investigate. And in 1975, the FBI does open an investigation. They examine the car. They interview witnesses. They test for evidence. But the FBI investigation is frustrating. They confirm the rear-end dents exist, but they say they can't prove another vehicle caused them. They can't find the missing documents. They can't identify any suspects. After months of investigation, the FBI closes the case without charges. They don't rule it murder, but they also don't definitively call it an accident. It remains inconclusive. Karen's family isn't satisfied. In 1976, they file a civil lawsuit against Kerr-McGee Corporation, seeking damages for Karen's plutonium contamination and alleging the company's negligence led to her death. The lawsuit doesn't directly accuse Kerr-McGee of murder, but it puts the company's safety practices on trial. The trial begins in 1979. It becomes a media sensation. For the first time, the public hears detailed testimony about conditions inside the plutonium plant. Workers testify about safety violations, falsified records, contamination incidents that were covered up. Expert witnesses explain how dangerous plutonium is, how inadequate Kerr-McGee's safety measures were. The jury is shocked. In 1979, they award Karen's estate $10.5 million in damages, one of the largest awards in history at the time. The jury found that Kerr-McGee had been negligent, that their safety violations had harmed Karen, and that the company needed to be held accountable. Kerr-McGee appeals. The case goes all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. In 1984, the Supreme Court rules in favor of Karen's estate, upholding the right of individuals to sue corporations for radiation exposure damages. It's a landmark decision that strengthens nuclear safety regulations across America. But here's the thing, the lawsuit never definitively answered the question of how Karen died. Was it murder? Was it an accident? The civil trial focused on her contamination, not her death. The criminal investigation never identified a suspect. To this day, no one has been charged in connection with Karen Silkwood's death. So what really happened? Let's look at the theories. Theory 1. It was an accident. Karen was exhausted from stress, long hours and fear. She fell asleep at the wheel, or swerved to avoid an animal. The rear-end damage came from the crash itself, not from another vehicle. The documents either never existed, they were just notes she planned to discuss verbally, or they were thrown from the car during the crash, and were never found. This is the official police conclusion. Theory 2. She was murdered by Kerr-McGee, or hired operatives. Karen had evidence that could destroy the company. Someone followed her, rammed her car from behind, pushed her off the road, staged it to look like an accident, and took the documents. This is what Karen's family and many supporters believe. Theory 3. She was murdered by someone else, anti-union forces, personal enemies, or even co-workers who felt she was causing trouble. The nuclear industry in the 1970s had connections to powerful interests. Karen was threatening a lot of people. Theory 4. She was deliberately contaminated to discredit her, but her death was coincidental. The contamination was meant to make her look careless, unreliable as a witness. Her death was genuinely accidental, but the timing made it look suspicious. We'll never know for certain. The physical evidence is gone. The car was eventually destroyed. Witnesses have died. Memories have faded. 50 years later, the truth is probably lost forever. But Karen's impact isn't lost. Her death sparked national outrage about nuclear safety. Congressional hearings were held. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission tightened safety regulations. Whistleblower protections were strengthened. Kerr-McGee's Crescent facility was eventually shut down. In 1983, a major motion picture was made about Karen's life, Silkwood, starring Meryl Streep. The film brought her story to millions of people worldwide. It depicted her as a hero, an ordinary woman who stood up against a powerful corporation and paid the ultimate price. Today, Karen Silkwood is remembered as a martyr for worker safety and corporate accountability. There's a memorial marker on Highway 74 where she crashed. Every year activists visit it, leaving flowers, honoring her sacrifice. But questions remain. If Karen was murdered, why wasn't anyone prosecuted? If it was an accident, why so many suspicious details? Why were the documents never found? Why did the FBI close the case without answers? Some believe it's a cover-up, that powerful interests in the nuclear industry or government didn't want the truth exposed because it would reveal corruption, negligence, and possibly murder. Others believe it's just an unfortunate combination of tragedy and coincidence that looks more sinister than it was. What we know for certain, Karen Silkwood was contaminated with plutonium under suspicious circumstances. She was gathering evidence against her employer. She died under mysterious circumstances on her way to expose that evidence, and no one has ever been held criminally responsible for her death. Her legacy lives on in whistleblower protection laws, in nuclear safety regulations, in the countless workers whose lives have been saved because someone finally paid attention to the dangers Karen tried to expose. Whether she was murdered or died accidentally, her death forced America to confront uncomfortable truths about nuclear safety and corporate accountability. And that's why Karen Silkwood's story matters, not just because of the mystery, though the mystery is compelling, but because of what she represented. She was an ordinary person who saw something wrong, and decided to do something about it, even when it was dangerous, even when powerful people wanted her to stay quiet. She was 28 years old when she died, a lab technician, a union member, a whistleblower, a woman who stood up to one of the most powerful corporations in America and paid with her life. Whether by murder or tragic coincidence, we'll never know. But we know this, Karen Silkwood didn't die for nothing. The nuclear industry changed because of her. Workers are safer because of her. And her name, once barely known outside a small Oklahoma town, is now synonymous with courage, justice, and the fight against corporate malfeasance. 50 years later, Her car crash remains unsolved, but her legacy is clear. One person, standing up for what's right, can change the world, even if it costs them everything.